panel that would assess companies that were being considered for rejection, kind of like a final sanity check. But they've now removed the peer review panel. And again, IRCC has taken on that role until further notice.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for the brief about the updates. And have there been any new communications, operational manuals, or policies from IRCC recently that it was sent to designated organizations?
There haven't been. Of course, there's been a lot of speculation in terms of what IRCC might implement as it relates to selecting companies and the ongoing roles of designated entities. But as it stands, there has not been, at least one that I'm aware of, any new guidelines or policy changes in that regards.
Perfect. And given that the SUV program is in place until December 2026, do you foresee any anticipated regulatory changes or discussion about modifying the program?
I definitely think there is a risk of that happening because there's the whole immigration industry seems to be in a very transitional period, and there's an election coming up, which may cause a different opinion in terms of the direction that immigration should take within Canada. So I definitely think there is risk of something happening, but it's a little too early to speculate exactly what might happen.
Yeah, exactly. And we have also read the news from about IRCC letting over 3,000 officers go. What impact do you think this will have on application backlogs and processing times?
Well, that's an interesting question because the whole reason why they implemented the quota system, as they announced, was to help with the backlog because there was such a massive amount of applicants who have been put through the program because the startup visa program was so unbelievably popular. And so they made it so we could only accept 10 companies per year, as mentioned. But then, as you touched on the flip side, they did announce, I recall, that 3,300 employees were going to be let go within the next couple of years. I also recall hearing that maybe it could be because they're implementing some new efficiencies with using artificial intelligence. So I would like to think that their overall objective, which is to process files a lot quicker, will actually work, even though they've gotten rid of all of these employees.
Yeah. No, that's perfect. Thank you so much for your insights. So that wraps up this section. Let's take a quick poll for the audience. Which recent startup visa change has impacted your work the most? A is more scrutiny on designated organizations. B, longer processing times for work permits. C, difficulty in obtaining letter of support. And D, increased compliance requirement for SUV applicants. Please drop A, B, C, or D in the chat, and we will take a few seconds to read your responses. B, longer processing time for work permits. D, increased compliance requirement for SUV applicants. And A, more scrutiny on designated organizations. That's interesting insight from all of you. We have one C here as well, which is difficulty in obtaining letter of support. Perfect. Thank you so much for writing your choices and just mentioning the option that you think that's the challenge for you. Now we will go to the second segment, which is about the due diligence and progress report. So Stuart, let's talk about this. What is the importance of due diligence reports in SUV applications?
I think it's very important because my understanding is when a company goes under review, one of the things they look at is, did the designated entity perform sufficient due diligence on the company? Because as you probably know, that's part of our raison d'etre for being. Like, why is there a designated entity? Why is this structure set up the way that it is? Well, it's because we are seen as the experts within the venture capital and startup tech and incubator world. And we have this professional expertise on being able to identify companies and entrepreneurs who have the best chances for being successful and contributing to the Canadian economy. And so in order for us to properly assess applicants who should be led into the program, our job is, of course, to perform due diligence. So assess the company and make sure that it has the potential to be successful. And so if there is a designated entity that is seen to be not performing sufficient due diligence, then my understanding is that IRCC can use that as a reason to reject the file, even if it's a good company.
And what specific business progress indicator does IRCC expect to see from startups?
I believe that the visa officers can ask for anything they want within those progress updates. And when they're performing an audit on a company, because I think this is part of the strategy of IRCC. I mean, I don't know internally because I don't work for IRCC, obviously, but I believe they don't want to provide a checklist that someone could just fill in and say, okay, I have the right to be accepted into this program and get my permanent residency because I meet all of these checklists. So they want to be able to look into the business and say, okay, if you're an e-commerce company and you've been working at your business for a year and a half, why have you not done any marketing considering your customer are consumers? So they might ask a question like that. Mm-hmm. And it could be a totally different question than somebody who's trying to implement some cybersecurity for the banking sector. So that's why it's usually business specific. And I always give the advice to applicants that they really need to legitimately focus on creating a real company and progressing their company forward in a way that makes the most sense for their business model and the market they're operating in within Canada. And if they do that, then the theory is they should be able to address whatever questions might come up during an audit by IRCC.
Yeah, this is, I think, great point and great advice of not looking for any checklist, but looking for your business to be successful and establish whatever that it needs to be done, do whatever that, and follow the checklist that is required for a business to be established and to grow in Canada, rather than just looking for the only permanent residency checklist. That's a great point. But how you think that the startups should document these business activities and milestones to avoid any procedural fairness letters?
So I think that they have to be actively engaged in their company on an ongoing basis, and that has to be genuine. And so they have to have evidence of that and document everything to be able to show that to a visa officer if needed. Often I like to compare showcasing to a visa officer that your company is legitimate and that it's progressing, similar to how an entrepreneur might be pitching to our venture capital firm. So if an entrepreneur is pitching me for an investment, of course, as an investor, I want to see, like, does this company have the ability to be successful? Like, am I going to get a return on my investment? Is this the right team to be able to execute on this business model that they're presenting to me? And I'm not just going to have a gut feel about the entrepreneur and make a decision based on that. I want to see proof and evidence that they have traction and that they're progressing their business forward to extrapolate and basically use as an indicator into the future if the company has the chance to be successful. So when I think of visa officer, if I was a visa officer, I would be looking at the entrepreneur and the applicant in a similar way. Like, do they have that evidence and proof to show that they are going to set up a real business in Canada and contribute to the Canadian economy?
And yeah, that's perfect. I think that's great. Again, that's a great point that you mentioned here. And like everything is, because the main aim of this startup visa program was just bringing entrepreneurs with the innovative idea to Canada. So that's, I think, what officers are supposed to check when it comes to the also due diligence, making sure first the person is right entrepreneur and the idea is the right idea for Canada and is innovative and is scalable in global scale. So that's thank you so much for your insights. Now, we know that navigating this due diligence can be complex, and we know consultants also face challenges. Let's do